This is Brent Skousen, youngest son of W. Cleon Skousen. Thank you again for tuning in today to another lesson taught by W. Cleon Skousen. Today's lecture is number 32 on the Old Testament, given in 1973 to his university class. It is unscripted and unedited, so you will feel like you're actually there. The text used today is from the Bible, 1 Kings chapters 4 through 8, supplemented by Dr. Skousen's book, The 4,000 Years, which can be found online, or if you prefer to listen to the book, check it out at audible.com. Today we cover chapter 9, Solomon Builds the Great Temple. Now sit back and join us in the classroom of W. Cleon Skousen. Enjoy!
Now, there's one thing I didn't cover last time I want to be sure and cover, and that's this pilgrimage which Solomon made up to the old tabernacle in order that he could tell the Lord how grateful he was for his assignment, but that he needed help. And he was very sensitive about the fact that he was young, somewhere between 20 and 25. He had taken over a marvelous kingdom from his father, and he felt incompetent to handle it by himself. Now, where did he go on that pilgrimage? Why did he go to Gibeon? Because that's where the tabernacle was located. He had a tabernacle of tents down in Jerusalem. What was that for? Put in the Ark of the Covenant, but it was just a large, lovely tent that he had for that purpose. The old tabernacle with the high priest was up at Gibeon. It was just a few miles, 5 or 6 miles away from Jerusalem, so it wasn't very far. But when he got there, he really poured out the sacrifices, didn't he? He killed a lot of animals. Some of them were burned, others were peace offerings where they just burned the kidney and the fat, and the meat is afterwards divided between the priest and the people. But it's kind of interesting that he should ask only for one thing, and that was wisdom and understanding. And the Lord was so pleased with him that in his night vision, did he get to see the Lord? Yes, he got to see him in the vision. And the Lord said, you didn't ask for long life or for riches, right? Or to honor or to overcome your enemies, right? And so he said, I'm going to give them all to you, in addition to having wisdom, and you'll have wisdom the like of which no one ever knew. Now, it was Solomon who did what Aristotle later did. He actually cataloged all forms of animal life and did a lot of marvelous things of which we have no record now any longer at all. But if we knew the contribution that Solomon made as a scholar, I'm sure we'd be amazed. And the Lord said, I'll give all these things to you now. And then he got all of them except one. Long life. His life was actually cut back because he did have problems right at the end. So he did have this marvelous promise of the Lord. Then he barely got back from his pilgrimage, and he had that terrible dilemma in which we have two women, innkeepers, that the Bible calls harlots, unfortunately. It should be innkeepers. And they both had little babies about the same time. One rolled over on hers and it died, smothered to death. And so she put it over by the other nursing mother and took the little live baby and kept it for herself. Even though the babies are very young, the other mother realized she was being cheated. And so he comes back from Gibeon, and they tell him of this problem. And he listens to the two women. One of them makes such a big fuss and screaming, etc. And so he orders that sword. You can imagine how it must have felt. If here's a young fellow, he's new in his calling, and this business of judging was tough anyway. And so he looks at the live baby and says, bring me a sword. And then he says, now we're going to cut this baby in two. We'll give half to each mother. You can imagine all the old heads, you see, who are so anxious to have him succeed. Such stupidity. Terrible. What we got on our hands. And of course, the real mother said, no, don't kill it. Give it to her. And the other woman says, yes, let's kill it, and so forth. And Solomon says, that's the mother. Give her the baby. And they all shake their heads and, fantastic. Wasn't that clever? That was really fantastic. What a great man. So everything's fine. Now, immediately afterwards, Solomon now wants to fulfill the instruction of his father and of the Lord to build a temple. And fortunately, there arrived from Lebanon an embassy from his father's old friend, Hiram. There's going to be a very interesting relationship here between these two. You'll be kind of interested in this. A little later on, Solomon's going to try and thank this man and Hiram, and he thinks Solomon wants some more money, so he'll send him another. It's interesting how kings deal with each other. Anyway, he said to Hiram, I wish you'd send me a man that's very clever in silver and gold and iron and brass, and also in very fine cloth with dyes of crimson and purple, and somebody who knows carpentry and structuring and real beautiful artifacts and work. For example, if you're going to do gold leaf on olive wood, beautifully carved olive wood in great scrolls and grapes and all kinds of things, how do you put gold on olive wood? Any goldsmiths among us? Dip it. Ship it? What? Oh, dip it. Dip it. It's a problem, isn't it? Do we glue it on with glue made of horses' hoofs, or do we have to have a special kind of glue that will go for wood and metal? In other words, you need to know. All right, he wanted such a man. Now, Nephi was such a man. Nephi knew his carpentry and knew all his metallurgy, and in those days they used to have skilled artisans that would know all these things. They knew the dyeing, they knew the wood carving, they knew the metallurgy. And he got such a man. What was his name? Same as the king, but no relationship. And so now he got ready to send up 10,000 at a time up to Lebanon to hew those timbers. And Lebanon is right in here. These mountains are called the Lebanese Mountains. And there's the anti-Lebanese. You have Mount Hermon about right here, Sea of Galilee, down to the Dead Sea. And the Lebanese mountains have these magnificent trees in them. Most of them are about as big around as this. But the wood is impervious to woodworms and that sort of thing, and much sought after for building of ships, palaces, etc. So here's Tyre and Sidon. Here is Beirut, which didn't exist in those days. In those days, it was Byblos, which is right there, Tyre and Sidon. And they bring these big, huge trees down out of the Lebanese mountains. And it goes right up from the ocean into those mountains. And then they would ship them down to Java, which is the port from which Jonah fled, you remember? He will flee in 800 BC. And then they're taken by camel over to the heights of Jerusalem. That's about a 3,000 feet climb. So that was a real chore to get those big logs up there. So he has 10,000 men at a time in the Lebanese mountains. He sends up all the necessary food and victuals and everything in order to take care of them. Then he has 70,000 who bear burdens. Now, the necessity for bearing burdens is this. There's the Cheesemaker's Valley, and then you get Mount Zion or Mount Moriah. And it comes down into Kidron, Mount of Olives, and down over into the Dead Sea. Now, this mountain has that peak on it, and then it has this pie shape. And this is a valley. See, can you all understand how that goes? It goes down about 1,000 feet. Now, it isn't quite that abrupt. Actually, it's down here, then it comes out a ways and goes down, and then it drops down about 1,000 feet. So when you go to see it, why my picture is accurate at this one. So that's the I want that to run. I think this is easy to defend. And also, there are cliffs down on that side. Now, the problem is to taper this off. Got to get rid of that. So what he did was to build walls as much as 123 feet high. And then these bearers of burdens fill in all that debris between the living rock, as they call it, and the walls that are to be built. So that's the way you get your temple square. It's 32 square acres. If you come down here and kind of go over to a spot right here, you go back in the mountain, that's where all this stone came from. And it's very interesting to go down there now, because they took the stone in Herod's day, because he was large to the square, and you can see right where the pegs are still in the slot. They would very carefully dig out in that solid rock a little trench, Then they put these wooden pegs in there, every little bit, pour water on them. They split out that water, a very big chunk of it, so. And they weigh about 100 tons. Very huge water. And they would prefab them right there. They would shape them, whatever was necessary, so there was no sound of a ballot heard on the Temple Square. Then they hauled them all the way up there, put them in. Now, at the present time, the Jews are excavating all along here. This is the Wailing Wall. The old Wailing Wall right there. And they're excavating all along. They're trying to find the passage that led up to the front, to the back of the temple. Because if they find that passage, they'll know where to build the temple today. They're hopeful it isn't the Dome of the Rock area, where the Muslims have their sacred blood. They're hopeful to build their temple over here. Now, when I saw the model of the temple, I was very worried whether or not they'd provided for 2 stories. The Bible only describes 1 story. But it does say that the upper chambers were gilded or lined with gold. And sure enough, they've gone ahead and done just what Josephus said. They put one building on top of another. So the second floor is just like the first. So we're okay. One day we have to teach them how to use that upper story, and they don't know how to use it yet. They don't know about it. Okay, now we get to this. How long did it take to level Temple Square and get it set up? 3 years. How long to build the temple? 6.5, about 7. All right, now the temple itself is not big. And it's twice the dimensions of the tabernacle. And these you should memorize. The Holy of Holies is square. The Holy of Holies is 30 by 30. 30 by 30. And the holy place is 60 by 30. And you divide those figures in half, and that's the figures for the tabernacle. All right, now, there are 2 pillars up in front of it on a porch, Boaz and Jachin. And then we have the porch, which had a gold floor. When you stepped on that floor, you were on gold tile. That's pretty fancy. There are 2 doors right in the front of the temple, covered by a veil. They are gold covered, and so are the 2 doors that go into the Holy of Holies. Then it had a beautiful veil, large, beautiful veil. Where's that? That's up where it would be in the modern temple between the terrestrial and the celestial room. Now, Josephus said there was a stairway right here in the wall that went up to the upper story. The only way you could get the upper story is to go in the Holy of Holies up here. So no one went up the Holy of Holies, I guess, unless they had the Melchizedek priesthood. Now, there were the cherubim, which is an angelic symbolization. They were located right here. They were standing here, and they'd have their wings that extended out this way and out this way. And then they touched over the Ark of the Covenant, which is right underneath there. That was the Holy of Holies, and the place where the high priest would go to receive revelations. This was we have the Holy of Holies solace. Now, to the right of the doorway is the golden altar of incense, which burned day and night. And here is the golden table of shewbread, and there were candelabras along on this side. Actually, it was on this side. Now, it was 45 feet high, and there were built 3 stories of buildings that were used by the priests and by the preliminary ordinances that leaned up against the building on the outside. They were 3 stories high, and they went up about 22.5 feet. They leaned against the building and left the upper half of the temple free. There's a corridor that went right around on the inside, and you could go off the corridor to the very room. There were 3-story rooms, but they were not very high, about 7-foot roofs to the wall. Very high. Any questions? Yes, sir. Is there a spiral staircase? Yes, a spiral staircase, Josephus said, in the wall. That was a very heavy wall. Well, the original they're both portable. But the tabernacle was made of tents. It was half this big. It was a big tent. Now, the Ark of the Covenant is a little ark, a little casket, 40 inches long, gold inside and out. It has 2 tablets inside that were written by the finger of God. The golden bowl of manna, And the rod of Aaron, I guess, was just to write a small piece of the Ark of the Covenant. It was the depository for the most sacred thing that people have. It's the depository. I mean, if you had two stone tablets written by the finger of God, that'd be extra special. It was to remind them of the covenant, but it was to do more. When the person went in before the Ark of the Covenant, when God didn't wish to appear before them, especially but speak to them, he did it from the Ark of the Covenant. What's the relation coming of the Savior? Well, a temple of these exact dimensions will stand on Temple Square when Christ comes. It'll already have been built in Jerusalem, and it's of this same dimension. And that's why the Jews right now are trying to find that old original corridor that went up to the Temple Square, because that will lead to where the old temple used to be. They want to build it right where it used to be. Tradition says it's where the Dome of the Rock is. Of course, they're not going to tear that down. So that's... No, at the time that Jerusalem was destroyed in 587 BC, the Ark of the Covenant and the temple itself, the temple was destroyed and the Ark of the Covenant disappeared. There's a tradition among Masons that some of the Masons carried it off, but that's just tradition. Well, there are many temples to be built on this continent. 26 at the New Jerusalem. We're going to have temples all over the continent. Well, there's the temple in New Jerusalem, in Independence, Missouri. Yeah. That's actually a complex of 26 temples. This temple, the new one, is it going to have huge gold doors? They're going to try and duplicate the original one. How much is it? The old temple square. They occupy all of it. They own all of it. By force of arms, they own all of it. Yeah, out of respect. They are very, very sensitive about other people's sacred places. I mean, they'll fight to defend an Arab sacred place. And some Jewish zealot got up on top of the Dome of the Rock and put up the Israeli flag. And boy, when Moshe Dayan heard about that, he was in real trouble, and they hauled it right down. And when I was over there the last time, next to the last time, you could not go in the mosque, that is the shrine, the Dome of the Rock. Only Arabs could go in, because an Australian Christian had just burned one whole end of the lovely mosque just a little bit to the west of the Dome of the Rock shrine. So all you could do is look through the windows. But last time when I went over, we were all allowed to go in. It's the place. See, there's a little outcropping of stone there that comes out above the facing of the... It's just as though you were walking along here, and the whole temple square was this level. All of a sudden, here's a big piece of limestone rock that comes up like this, just like our stage here. Now, that's the threshing floor of Lebanon. And the grain was stored underneath. There's a cave there that he was supposed to have used, and the threshing was done on the flat area, up above, which isn't flat anymore, but it's supposed to be. And that's where Abraham offered Isaac as a sacrifice. That's where David puts his sacrifices that were consumed by fire, where the Lord said to build the temple, you remember? So that spot of rock is extremely sacred. The Mohammedans considered sacred because Muhammad said that he had a vision and he was transported from Mecca up to Jerusalem. Let's see, by that time I guess he was at Medina. No, he wasn't. He was living at Mecca with his patroness, businesswoman who had hired him. And he said he went in vision to Jerusalem and got on a white horse and was taken up to heaven from where the Dome of the Rock now stands. And he saw Adam and Moses and Jesus and all the ancient prophets, and they told him how to set up the Brotherhood of Man, which is the Islamic religion. Everybody's a brother, you see. People of the book, they call it, the choice people of God. So every Islamic or Mohammedan, as we call them, considers that mosque, you see, very, very sacred. That's not only the sacred because the Temple of Solomon was there, but it's sacred because that's where Muhammad went to heaven. Came back before the morning in vision and went back. Yeah, that's the background. And the Jews said, we're not going to destroy it, but we are going to build our temple. And that's, as I mentioned to you, that's when the press said to the chief rabbi, if you're not going to destroy the mosque and you're going to build the shrine, and you're going to build your temple and you have to do it in this generation, how do you expect to achieve that? And his answer was, well, that's God's problem. He wants a temple there. He's got to work it out because we're not going to tear down the shrine. Yes. So that is the Dome of the Rock. Oh, that's the mosque of Acre. That's actually a mosque. You see, the Dome of the Rock is a shrine. You don't hold services there. But that other big building is actually a mosque, and it has carpets and rugs in it. That's the one you mean? Where they kneel? Oh, well, that's a mosque, and on their Sabbath day, there'd just be a massive people in there. Yeah, I've been there during services, and that mosque is just loaded. Yeah. Yes. Ezekiel describes how they'll offer sacrifices, and they'll be offered in righteousness this time. Sons of Levi will offer unto the Lord an offering in righteousness. Yes, Jews who are called Cohens are really Levites. In fact, that's why they call them Cohen. The word Cohen means priest. I was going to tell Mickey Cohen that once at 3 o'clock in the morning when he just had the front of his house blown off. But that's what the word Cohen means. Any Jews that are called Cohens, it's the effort of that family to keep the genealogy straight. They're not really Jews. They are Levites. Because they don't have a temple. They figured they couldn't offer sacrifices unless they had a temple, which is not a correct doctrine. But they've offered no sacrifices since 70 A.D. when the temple was destroyed. And when they have Passover now, they have a symbol of the sacrifice. That's all. Nobody. Yes, well, we're assuming that down through the ages, there's some remnant of it left among them. I don't know. Brother McConkey doesn't think that they'll be able to build without our help. And he and I discussed this as students, one with another. Because he may turn out to be right. He thinks that our people will even help us build the temple, or some of our priesthood will be there. And I've taken the view that since they won't recognize Christ when he comes, they'll be so surprised. Say, what are these wounds in my hands and my feet? I've rather been led to the conclusion that they're going to just go ahead and use Ezekiel and build a temple, and then when Christ comes, they'll be just truly made. Find out who Jesus will not have built it. But we'll have to wait and see. As I say, but McConkey turned out to be right. We actually may help the bill. But you see, another reason that I felt that we wouldn't be involved is because we wouldn't be offering animal sacrifice. And Ezekiel says they will offer an offering unto the Lord in righteousness. And when the Lord gave the Aaronic priesthood to all the Catholic Joseph Smith through John the Baptist, what did he say about that? And this priesthood shall not be taken from the earth until the sons of Levi offer an offering unto the Lord in righteousness, meaning that it will be taken away, and that thereafter there will only be one priesthood that's not tested before. As it was in the beginning of that. I can't really tell you any more than I told you. When Jesus came, the Aaronic priesthood was still in existence and acceptable in Zacharias, for example, the father of John the Baptist. The Doctrine and Covenant says that there was priesthood among the Jews right down to the coming of Christ. So he may have preserved it somehow among the Levites. We'll just have to wait and see. Yes, Joseph Smith said, you don't know it, but there's going to be blood sacrifices in our day. In this dispensation, everything's going to be restored. And here the Jews, you see, they don't know they're supposed to be two coming to the Messiah. They'll go right ahead and offer blood sacrifices. That's why they'll be so shocked when they find out that Jesus appears, and they always said he'd come in power, and he will. And they look at his hands, and they have those marks in them. Zechariah, their own prophet, says when they ask that question, he'll say, there are the marks I received from God. That'll be the Levitical order. Yes. How do you do the chronological order of events? Well, I would like to well, as you know, about a third of it's already come back. That all just came right on target. And the Jews are back. Some of my very best friends said, from a scholarship standpoint, you have really got your name. Because the Arabs are never to allow the Jews to have their own country, their own individual state. Of course, it was 1940, all kinds of press, and I said, well, I don't have my neck out there. That's all I said, what the Lord has said. You don't have your neck out, but he said, what the Lord has said. So 1948. They were in the vicinity in 1967. They got the city and they got all the territory that was held during much of David's reign. That's what great death. They could have taken very free. 67 more. We should have stopped. The present Jewish people in Israel are not prepared for the gospel yet. They're quite irreligious. They study the Bible rigorously too, because it's their history. But they skip the prophets with that. They don't believe in any life after this life, no judgment. And the lives reflect half of them are going to be destroyed. And they love that way. I took this in my article last month. December issued inside. Going to be a real plan, which be a humbly office. Still, they go ahead and fulfill this prophecy. Our people are always shocked when you talk about the Bible and then they're sort of food and things. This is where that town was. Let's make it 2,000 there's we set up the rocks and it's right there where they said it was. And then you start talking about the prophets. 29th of Isaiah, we set up a come forth. And no, they said, of course, that prophetic area we just good. Yes. You think that's people now that has stuff. Sure. Oh yeah, definitely. Right. Even David Ben Gurion, it's a history of Israel that we just finished. That's not a copy. It's just way off on all the spiritual aspects of the whole picture. And that's what Joseph Klausner of Hebrew University was so unhappy with it about. He said, you've got Marxism in here. You've got communism and materialism in here. He said, this is not the way of the prophets. And you will not prosper under. And he says, you're not humble like you've got to be. And believe me, God will humble you. You can turn it back. And it's called a messianic idea in Israel. It's a book. It's a false to get quite great. But that's why he criticized. Because they came in as communists and many of them atheists. They set up the communions as communists, right out all over Russia and so forth. They thought they had a great thing. And they found out they didn't work. And David Ben Gurion was honest enough to say it's capitalism they want. So he sold all their housing, or the cuts of right now to take that's great. And immediately people started taking care of their home. And he urged them to sell their land to the farmers, and lease it for 99 years. Immediately the farmers picked up the production. So David Ben Gurion just can't say enough about it. That's you read about this, you'll have a lot of stuff to do now.
Is it for the family of David or a leader named David?
Yes, he'll build a temple. The temple will be built by a man named David. He's called the branch and David in the Old Testament.
God.
You mean David for the last days? Well, this is what we're going to feel. Maybe that would happen before the coming of Christ. David, he would have an massive right. But Joseph Smith said he would be very right. No, they're not. They are on history. In other words, if the Bible says that there's gold in that area, there's got to be gold. It says there was copper there, there's got to be copper. That's the way they feel about that part. Their ancestors were very good historians, the native court attacker. When it comes to a prophecy by Isaiah or Jeremiah or something like that, that's considered to be just happy guessing. They don't accept the divinity of the Messiah or the scriptures or the prophets. That's how far away they are. As far as you know, it's the same. Summers are quite warm, but Jerusalem is 3,000 feet above sea level, and therefore not overly hot, but the winters are miserable. 3,000 feet, and Mediterranean breeze is cold up there.
Well,
Some snow, occasional snow.
Except the summer.
Actually, I think it's close to 2,000 down. 22,000 down. Yes. But I need to point out two things. Number one, it is believed that some of the ancient tribes have the cyclones on the street. That would see recently. They just have a little results and value those showing off cheaper cars. So it's like the two. And that's one aspect. The other is that today when you go to Israel, it will support almost it is luxurious. You drive down through those banana groves, that citrus grove, perfume in the air, it's heavy. I'm not sure they love it like. It almost intoxicating. The pair of books down there. the town swimming pool out of the orange field. Orange blossom sent us. It would almost make your head dizzy, it was so heavy the perfume. So it was very luxurious. Now it's gone back. They planted over 100 million trees. We retain the water now. It changed the whole climate there. Oh, well, that was all that was left. When the Romans tore down the temple, they also tore down the wall. But they left a little chunk of it right here, of the original temple at Herod's time. So they go and they'll pat the wall. Their prayer is next year, we'll go back, you see. That's what they've been praying ever since. And in 1967, they made it. But now it's turned out that wasn't the only part of the wall that the Romans didn't destroy. As they dumped all the big rocks and the debris over the side, why, the whole lower structure of the wall all around was retained. It's preserved, actually. But as they dug down, they got down to the streets here, which are where Herod's city used to be. And that whole city's paved with marble. And they would have beautiful marble pillars. Herod had built a real Roman headquarters there. So it was a marble-paved city with beautiful circuses and palaces and baths and everything the Romans were famous for. That's the city where Jesus walked. And we're just getting down to those marble streets now. And when people go over there today, they're walking the streets that were built by the Arabs in the 16th century. And so when people say, I walk today where Jesus walked, well, in Jerusalem, they're anywhere from 15 to 90 feet above where Jesus was. On the Sea of Galilee, it'll be where he walked. Going up the Mount of Olives, it'll be where he walked. Over in Bethany, at Bethpage, it will be where he walked. Yes. Well, they'll give you an idea here. You can imagine killing all these thousands of animals. And, of course, the entrails had to be washed and everything and disposed of. The body for the entire herd. So they have these very big reservoirs under here. That's 32 to 35 acres. And some of these big underground reservoir cisterns. You get down in them, and it looks like a football field underground practically. They're so big. And here are the pillars that hold up the roof above you, extending on and on and on down in the dark. Well, what they did was put them in and then build it up around. They're called the baths. Then they brought the water in clear from down near Bethlehem on aqueducts to fill them. Then they had the drainage, an elaborate sewerage system, so that the drainage of the blood and the water would come out and go down on a well. And so they had some beautiful gardens down here where all of that blood and debris ended up, fertilized by 60. Any other question now about the temple and the dimensions and everything? How many times did God appear to Solomon? Twice. And how many times did he hear the voice of God? 3 times. Because right while he was building the temple and could have gotten discouraged, the Lord spoke to him, didn't appear to him, but spoke to him, and promised him that he'd have complete success and everything would be granted unto him that had been promised earlier if he would obey all the commandments of God. Now, I just have 1 or 2 other thoughts I want to mention to you. In the book, I refer to the endowment. And it seems that in the days of Solomon, a few people were allowed to have the endowment, and they would go upstairs, of course, to receive it. After the Aaronic priesthood ordinances were performed on the first floor, they went up to the upper floor for the Melchizedek priesthood. Now, these ordinances were not continued after Elijah, 100 years after this temple was built. By the time of Elijah, the apostasy was so rank that God took Elijah and all sealing powers of the priesthood. Now, you could still be married for time and eternity, because that doesn't have to be done in a temple if there's no temple available. In our day, it has to be done in a temple because the temples are available. In those days, it did not. When Christ came, Elijah appeared with Moses, conferred these sealing powers on the heads of Peter, James, and John on the Mount of Transfiguration, and they started the temple ordinances in due time. When Christ was killed and went to glory, and all the apostles were driven and destroyed, one group of Christians kept the temple ordinances and wrote them down. And they were down in Egypt. They're Coptic Egyptians. And copies of those temple ordinances, written and copied in about the 2nd and 3rd century, were found not too long ago. And the scientists just couldn't figure out what in the world these Coptic Christians were talking about. Hugh Nibley got a hold of them, and immediately the College of Religion faculty were invited to go down to the Manti Temple, and Brother Nibley says, "Look what we have found." And there are the exact words of the temple endowment, which God has always required us to memorize. Now, this solves a very important problem with reference to the temple. When the church was first being restored, the saints went out of New York into Kirtland and into Missouri and then back to Nauvoo, at which time some of the brethren who were Masons said to Joseph Smith, in the interest of building up good relations with our state, why don't you become a Mason? And let's build a Masonic lodge. So the largest Masonic lodge in all Illinois was in Nauvoo. And Joseph Smith was put through all three orders, apprentice, journeyman, and master Mason, in one day, which of course is not kosher, but anyway, it was done. And so Joseph received it. Now, he'd received part of the endowment, and already he must have been puzzled a little bit by some similarities, but then he got the whole endowment. And lo and behold, now they find out what it's all about. He called in the Masons and he said, look what the Masonic order really is the vestigial remnants of. And now we've got the whole thing. But what had happened, apparently, those Coptic Christians made contact with the European Crusaders in the 11th and 12th century and taught them these very sacred fraternal vows. These Crusaders go back to Germany and England and set up the Masonic order adapted to their guild system, and said this is the order of the builders of Solomon's temple, which no Mason today will give credit to, but it used to be said that way. So they said, actually, these secret vows are in connection with the building industry, carpenters and masons and so forth. And so when Joseph Smith got hold of it and saw it, what it's really talking about are the 3 degrees of glory. It has nothing to do with masonry as such, carpenters and masons, etc. And they have the actual words in many cases, and they have the signs and the symbols and all the beautiful symbolism of the temple, but don't know what it means. And so the prophet was so thrilled, as was Brigham Young and Heber C. Kimball, who were also Masons, when they got the whole order and what it stood for, and the temple service was restored. And for many years, we couldn't figure out where the Masons actually got some of these things. The words are practically identical in some cases, but now we've dug these things up, and it undoubtedly was the Coptic Christians that gave it to the Masons. So that's kind of solved that problem. Yes, the Masonic order in Utah does not allow Mormons to join, but we've had lots of Masons join the church all over the church in various parts of the world. That grew out of a feud that developed way back in the 1800s in Salt Lake City, where the Masons considered the Mormons their enemies. Why was the entrance toward the east? Because Christ will come out of the east for his second coming. He will come from the east. Any other thoughts before we have our test on Tuesday?
Does the church own these records that they dug up in Egypt now?
No, they're in the hands of some of the archaeological foundations. But Brother Nibley's been in on the translation of some of them. Anything else? Yes. Does the church what? No, it's discouraged. Joining any secret organization, fraternal or otherwise, is discouraged by the church. Not that they have anything against the Masons, because we've had some good Mason Mormons, but priesthood holders are so busy they don't have time for any fraternal program. They got one of their own. All right, we'll see you on Tuesday.